Welcome to the Remarkable Dentist Podcast with me, Fred Joyal, where I interview amazing dental practice owners digging into their successes and failures, their insights and hindsights, getting their views on where dentistry is going, and discovering what it took for them to become remarkable. Welcome to the next episode of the Remarkable Dentist Podcast with Fred Joyal, me, your host. I'm here with Dr. Sean Holliday, who runs Holliday Orthodontics all the way over in Hawaii. He's coming to us from across the Pacific today, and we're going to talk about how he's grown from a single practice to 4 orthodontic practices over the course of a few years. It's a remarkable journey with some real creativity and, of course, tons of challenges. And we're going to find out all about those. So, Dr. Holliday, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure. Aloha.
Yeah, so how? Just let's go down. Let's run the basic stats. How long have you been practicing?
So I've been practicing since 2004. So what is that? Almost 17 years now that I came. So right after orthodontic residency in Chicago, I moved over to Hawaii, and I've been on the island of Oahu, and like you mentioned, we have an orthodontic practice, and we've grown to 4 locations over the last several years. So
are you originally from Hawaii, or did you just go nuts and decide to go all the way to Hawaii?
Yeah, no, I'm not originally from Hawaii. I'm actually originally from Costa Rica. So, I'm used to the tropics, but I did live a short span in Hawaii. My dad worked for Del Monte as an engineer. And so we did live in Hawaii a short period of time. And then we lived a lot of overseas, kind of like the military, because he did project management for the U.S. State Department, U.S. Embassy projects. But after many, many years in the Midwest, I moved to Hawaii. So I've been here since.
Yeah, well, you missed the ocean, certainly, but and the humidity, apparently. But, Costa Rica and Hawaii, very similar, probably almost on the same parallel. But what drew you to orthodontics? What made you decide that was your specialty?
I don't have any dentists or in my family. So I got interested in dentistry back in high school. My dad's an engineer. My mom is an artist. So I think in some ways I was bred to be a dentist in many ways. It was a great interest. I would say that I became very interested in high school when my mom was doing orthodontic treatment as an adult, and my brother was also in treatment. And back then I was living in St. Louis, Missouri. And so my brother was being seen at St. Louis University, the orthodontic department, and my mom was seeing in private practice. And it just so happens, interestingly, that the American Association of Orthodontists has a headquarters in St. Louis. So I did some research. I observed a lot of dental practices, and just decided dentistry was my gig. And I just felt that it was a good mix for me as far as my interest in art, science, and engineering and those aspects. So I became a dentist, and, I really love prosthodontics. I got involved in a lot of that and did some teaching in that aspect. And I loved restorative dentistry, but I really, truly still loved orthodontics. And I felt as a specialty, it was going to be my focus. So that's what I followed through on.
Yeah, well, what you said something interesting, because I've always considered the best dentist to be a combination of an artist and an engineer. So you were actually bred for that in a way by your parents, because there is so much artistry to dentistry, and certainly a tremendous amount of artistry in orthodontics, because you have to envision this new smile, and now you have to engineer it in that direction.
Yeah, and I have a lot of interest in technology. When I started I started a 6-year dental program straight out of high school because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And when I applied, I asked, that was back in 95. I asked, how are computers going to be involved? That was my interview. And they said, computers will never be involved in dentistry. This was in mid 95s. Let's see, fast forward now, my dad laughs because he was with me at that interview, and he laughs as he comes to my office and I have, these scanners. So, digital scanners, and we have 3D printers, and we're cloud-based computing and all this stuff. And he laughs, and just remembering back then when faculty were telling me that computers weren't going to be involved. So, I feel that artistry, engineering, and technology, dentistry has been at the forefront of all of these aspects. And the reason why I really became a dentist, because I wanted to be in business for myself. My dad was in the corporate world, and I think the corporate world has a lot of advantages. But I found that dentistry was a great niche where you had multiple opportunities. And I loved having the opportunity to be, to run my own enterprise, so to speak, my own business. And that's kind of where things have come to where they are now, with our multiple locations and multi-doctor group practice that I own and operate. So I think those are the great mix. I think dentistry just has so many amazing aspects from all those areas.
Well, that was a classic never say never moment with that guy. Computers will never. This is a challenge with a lot of the educators in dental school, is they're 20 years behind and staying there. You're lucky if you've got someone who has a vision for where dentistry is actually going to be going, because, as you say, it's at this tremendous intersection of artistry and engineering and technology where so much is happening. I mean, it's really, I've been involved in dentistry 30 something years now, and just really watched the technological revolution that's occurred primarily in the past 10 years at an accelerated rate. And I think it's just going to keep going. So you bounced yourself over to Hawaii. Clearly you didn't have a patient base when you showed up there. So what happened? Like, how did you start?
Yeah, it was a rough start. I mean, I was an orthodontist and I was filing for forbearance, the first year. When I called my school, I said, I can't quite pay my student loans. They couldn't quite understand. I think when I graduated, a lot of people discouraged me to move to Hawaii because it's not really necessarily a business friendly environment here. High cost of living, very high dentist per capita, low, insurance reimbursement, lots of, I would say, business challenges. But, I've run my practice mainly on relationship basis, relationship with patients and treating them the best way that I can. And as a specialist, I find that we have to have strong partnership with our dentists that we are working with, and they have to refer patients to me. So we focused a lot on the quality of care and then the way that we treated our patients and our referrals. So, just a little at a time. I would say the first several years were rough, particularly the first couple, but really honestly took about 5 years before the practice was really ramping up. And, I worked in different places and then just kept growing the practice organically. I did purchase a practice from an orthodontist who passed away a few years into my career, and, just kind of merged that. And most of our growth has been organic, as in growing patients and our referrals. And then just recently, actually last year, we just bought another practice from an orthodontist who was looking to, reduce their time in practice. So, I think there's a lot of opportunities as to how you can grow and adjust your business along the way.
So let's go back a little bit to year number one. Were you associating? You were itinerant, combination of those?
I did both. Yes. So I was an associate for an orthodontist. The practice was very small. I joined and they offer you, a percentage of collections or production and things like that. But a percentage of zero is still zero, or a percentage of a small amount is still a very small amount. so I did work as an associate, and then what I did was just practice out of some general practices that had available chairs, right? So here in Hawaii, a lot of dentists don't work on Thursdays. So there was one office I kind of subleased space on a Thursday to see my patients. And another one I worked on a Saturday, to build up momentum, so to speak, or critical mass. So those locations, eventually I, built my own locations, but I started from scratch in multiple locations. And that was kind of, a tough part at the beginning, but over time that grew, and, just little by little, year by year, just kept at it.
So what happened is you were working at the GPs maybe one day a week, and then eventually you opened the first practice, and those GPs began like sending the patients to you instead of having you coming into the office. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, we did a shift after a few years. So they of course, they would send me patients internally. And then, I have a lot of friends that do practice here. So just working to get referrals over time. And then we did some, different marketing things to try to pull patients in. I would say some worked, many didn't, but, just doing what we could to gain patients. As you know, that's a challenge. And I think as a dentist, you don't receive that education, as to how to market and run a business. And that's the biggest challenge when you come out of school. So it helps to have knowledgeable people, to help guide you in that aspect. But yeah, we would work with these offices that send us patients. And like I said, I did have an associateship, and eventually I bought in and bought out that practice. And that was one of my locations. Yeah, that was it.
Oh, so you bought out the doctor who was that, had he passed away when you bought the practice, or was it?
So I bought it in, and then about a year later, he did pass away. Yes. So I did buy the practice in full eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that became practice number one. When did you start working with Fortune Management? Because I know you've had a fairly long relationship with them.
It's been quite a few years. I Fred, I kind of lose track. It's probably been over a decade. So, I think at first it was a great opportunity to network with a lot of great dentists. I think at the same time, just helped me to gain some more business knowledge. And I've used many different consulting groups in the past, and I've been working with them for quite a long time. Particularly as my practice was growing, it helped to give me some support, particularly in building a team, because, as dentists, we become, usually we're the top of the class of school and kind of pretty, I would say, A-type people, especially orthodontists. But to run a successful practice, you need to have a good leadership team, a lot of people behind you that drives the business. It's really not a one-man show, that's for sure. And so I found that they were amazing at helping me build, our leadership team and a lot of these other areas where I was making mistakes. And when you have multiple practices, you also have to leverage capital and, lending and construction and equipment. These are very expensive. In Hawaii, we have high cost of living, but we also have very high construction costs. Price per square foot here in Hawaii is somewhere around 300. I think in places like California, it's a third of that.
Everything's got to come in on a boat. It's like there's no iron ore mining going on in Hawaii, right? To make the nails and stuff like that. So literally everything has to come in on a cargo ship, which is pretty challenging. So
it is challenging. And so I think in business, you learn that you do learn from mistakes, but mistakes sometimes can be very costly. And so I think that's where having a good team to advise you helps you with the learning curve. And, you can learn from the school of hard
you don't
knocks.
have to make all your own mistakes,
Correct.
You can invent new ones rather than make the standard ones that everybody's making to learn. So you went from one practice to two. When did that leap happen? Was that an acquisition, or did you just see an opportunity to go into another area? How did that occur?
Yeah, so I would say when I first started at practice one, it was within a few months where I went to the second practice, and it was just basically a start, a de novo practice. I worked within a general dental practice. It was a large practice that, like I said, I was using on Thursdays when they were closed, and so I think I started in June or July of 2004, and by October, November, I started that second one because I just knew that I wasn't generating enough cash flow in my associateship. It wasn't enough to make a living. So I did start the second one. And I think the following year I did the third with another doctor in another area that really honestly had like one orthodontist. So we felt that there was an opportunity. And so I used his office on Saturdays. And so I kind of shared spaces. The first several years, I was sharing a space with an orthodontist in one location, and the other two locations were general practices where I was using their locations when they were out. And, it took several years, and it's kind of around the time when I joined Fortune Management that at that stage, I was going to build my own, brick and mortar, invest into building an office. And that's why I felt that I didn't want to be making stupid mistakes, it's a very large investment. So at that stage, I went for funding and consolidated some of my business loans from the past and built my first location. It actually was one of our satellites, and I had bought in the other orthodontist, so I practice one, I bought, it was just an older office. And then practice two, I built brand new from scratch. But I had some patients that I was seeing in a general practice, just less than a mile away. So I kind of moved over there, and it was kind of freaky because I was going there, I think 1 or 2 days a month, and to build a brand new office, $500,000 invested on 2 days a month was a bit scary.
Yeah, you gotta have some crooked teeth.
Yeah. So that was my first office that I built. The original office that I bought out, that I merged, and I bought the other orthodontist. Eventually that practice grew. That's our largest practice. So that's about almost 60% of our core business now. And, I wasn't able to expand the space. These are all leasehold spaces. So I built another office, 2,500 square feet, large, kind of our, main hub. And so we did build that office again. So I've done like 3 constructions already in the past 17 years. It's, multiple different lending opportunities and equipment buys and things like that. So these are,
well, the banks obviously have to believe in you. Banks like to believe in dentists, but you're making them nervous because you just keep on building. But they trust you, I think. And they found out that you could start with 2 patients and turn it into a substantial practice. So let's talk about Hawaii, because there's a lot of dentists who expand, but Hawaii is a very unusual state with all the islands. And some dentists actually island hop, don't they? Like they create a practice on 2, or they got one in Oahu, one on the Big Island, and one in Maui. Now, do they own a plane? Is that how they do it?
I don't think they do, but that is a challenge. Obviously we literally practice on an island. And so you do have limited, market share and expansion. It's not like, the island there's some growth. At the same time, we are capped, right? Geographically, for sure. So, even before I came here, there are already several doctors that do practice out of other islands. I moved here post 9/11, so I just really didn't want to travel. I also found the difficulty was just the logistics as well as the travel time. I don't want a super long commute, but I would say they have found, my colleagues who do practice in island hop have a lot of success. I think there are a lot of opportunities. Some of the other islands are less saturated for sure than Oahu. The fees can be a bit higher in those islands, but it is a little bit more challenging. Obviously, they do fly. Some of them, do live in the islands. I know on Maui, there are some orthodontists that live there and practice there, but there are many orthodontists that live on Oahu, and they do travel to, to Big Island or Kauai or whatever it may be. And they sometimes hop in the morning, 5 a.m. flights, and they see patients, and then they come back 6 p.m. flight back. That's their Hawaiian Airlines is their their commute. So
it's commuter train. Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's not that far, but it's probably you spend more time in the airport in and out than anything else. You're up in the air very quickly and back down again.
Correct.
But yeah, that's an interesting approach to life. Now, what have been some of the biggest challenges you have found in moving into multiple locations like this? Do you have partner dentists at this point? But as part of one of my questions, but give me the scope of the challenges you're facing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that you have to learn. I alluded to the first one, and that's building leadership within your team, because there comes a point that you can only handle so much, and I think as dentists, we're used to many times doing everything ourselves, and you have to create a different mindset where you're willing to delegate, and you build trust and accountability and a team that supports you, to make sure that you can leverage them to maintain quality a result, but at the same time, making sure that everything's taken care of and that you're able to not, go insane in growth. So I would say leadership is the biggest challenge. You have to take on a different hat that's not taught in dental school. I think in many ways we work on personal development and learning ourselves how to build our own skills. But what I have found over the years is that you do have to work with the team, and the team, obviously, they're anywhere from administrative to we have a marketing team to treatment coordinators and clinical assistants and financial coordinators, but a team of dentists has been now my biggest focus over the last several years. So in 2014, I brought in my first associate, and she joined our practice. And back then we were hopping between, two, 3 offices, running them here and there. And then now we have, I have 2 full-time associates, 1 part-time, and then we have a doctor joining us next month. So building a doctor team has been kind of a unique learning experience for me, because, it's just different than I got really comfortable working with my team of clinical assistants, treatment coordinators, things like that. But to work with fellow colleagues, it's a different skill in and out of itself. And, I think everybody has knowledge and ways to learn from each other, but at the same time, we have to be a unified team, because dentists, you ask 5 dentists how to do something, they're going to give you 5 or 6 different treatment plans. Everybody tends to have a different way of doing things and preference. And in a group practice, that can be quite a challenge. It can be a challenge because then our team has a hard time, on Dr. X day, Dr. Holliday day is one way to doing things. And, if Dr. Kimura comes in, then it's a different way to do things. And that's just, that makes it a massive challenge in the office. So we have to, I like to call it like doctor calibration. We have to meet collaboratively, but also talk together. Like, how do we, where do we set standards? What are our core values? What are we focusing on? And so that we keep a focus for the team, and obviously for patient care as well. So they're not, getting different ideas of how we want to treat them.
So how much dentistry are you doing? How many days are you working, twisting brackets or whatever? So,
yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, our practice is about 70% clear aligner treatment. It's probably above that. So I actually do most of my work is actually digital workflow. So we use our main business is Invisalign, actually. I do some brackets. We do a significant number, but it's definitely the minority of our patient. So we do a lot of digital work. We do some in-house aligners as well, 3D printing and things like that. But most of our work is digital. And I do see patients in the clinic. I was at around 10 days a month pre-pandemic. And, with the pandemic, things have changed a bit. Practice capacity has reduced, we can't see, we're down 20% or plus of patients per day. So we had to increase our clinical days. So I'm up to about 3 to 4 days a week, but my target range is around 3 or less. That's kind of where.
So you still like going in every day. There's some dentists who, their dream is they want 4 or 5 practices and dry fingers,
Yeah.
That's so, but that's not you. It sounds like this is still very satisfying for you to do all of this.
Yeah, I love everything. I love everything of dentistry. So I still do like patient care. I mean, at this point in my life, I still love to go in and see patients. But, I guess my role has changed over the years. I do a lot of, meetings with our management team, with our marketing team, with our doctor team and things like that. So I think in many ways, my role has been more as a doctor owner, kind of helping everybody to do the best that they can. And so that's one of my main hats, but I do still love clinical care. So I'm still involved in that for sure.
Well, it's certainly, particularly orthodontics, is basically every case you're making somebody look better. There's a lot of being a general dentist. A lot of it is just getting people back up to healthy or out of pain or restored to what they once were. You're taking them to this whole other level. So I could see where that would be incredibly satisfying, especially since your team is doing a lot of the work, right? That's one of the other beauties of orthodontics is there's a lot more assistant activity than would normally be the case with general dentistry. Well, that's my understanding of it from the outside.
Yeah, I think, orthodontics is quite unique in that orthodontics is about developing a plan. And so that's where my dad's engineering side comes in. You're really honestly like the engineer and architect. The implementation, I'm not saying it's easy, but it is not as complex as setting up a good treatment plan. And so with digital dentistry and particularly clear aligner treatment, the treatment is really front loaded. What we do is just develop the treatment plan and set how everything needs to be done, right? So the appliance design, the staging and all that stuff. And it's really about delivery of the aligners. So when you bond attachments, you do different clinical procedures in the mouth. They're very sharply focused, right? So I like to work on office systems and standardizing that process because that really can be buttoned down quite a bit. The focus then really as the team, instead of just being about the procedure, it's really about building the relationship. So as you said, we're dealing with patients in good health. They're looking to enhance and improve their lives, by adjusting their occlusion or straightening their teeth. So it's really the fun part that the assistants and I get to do at that stage. On the back end, I've already developed how the plan needs to be. We've set the ClinCheck, so to speak. If it's like Invisalign, we set how that happens. And if you do that well, that's just work that you can do, from home, from anywhere at the beach, and you don't have to be in the office. And so when we're at the office, it's really focused about building the relationship with the patient, motivating them to follow through on the treatment, enhancing their experience in the delivery of care. But orthodontics is unique in that end. We're not really in their mouth for long procedures. It's just really about talking with them and reviewing their process and checking on their progress and monitoring their treatment. So I love it. It's a lot of fun.
I'm really interested in the ratio of clear aligners. You must be very popular with Invisalign at this point.
Yeah, they take up a very large part of my P&L. So yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm, we're one of their top customers. So I'm pretty sure the largest in the state. So we do quite a bit of clear aligner, and I do teach in their faculty. So I've done quite a bit collaboratively with them. But yeah, I've used clear aligner treatment for many, many years. I would say started in 2004, obviously when I started, but in 2008 is when it ramped up. When I was early in practice, I was struggling, we talked about that earlier. And I found there's great clinicians here in Hawaii. What's going to set me apart, right? I'm not from here. There's lots of amazing clinicians. And I tried many different things. We tried clear brackets, we tried lingual brackets, we tried clear aligners. And what moved the needle for me in this market was clear aligner treatment. And especially back then, the only people who were really doing clear aligners was one orthodontist and mainly general practitioners. In residency, when you're trained, they tell you it's junk, it doesn't work. Bend some wires. Braces are the standard of care and what's best in orthodontics. And that's how I trained. That's the lens that I had, right? But when I worked in a GP practice that did a lot of Invisalign, and I told you I was there on the Thursdays, and then I started, snooping around as to what they were doing. I was like, wow, this thing is pretty amazing. And then we had some, faculty, some doctors that came from the West Coast who were teaching here. And I saw what they were doing, and I thought, as an orthodontist, I know how to move teeth. I've been trained to do so. I've just never been trained with this other tool, this digital process and clear aligners. So I dove really headfirst into the treatment modality because they don't teach you that in residency. In fact, even now, because we've had multiple associates, most doctors that come out of school, even today, really have very limited knowledge of that treatment modality. It's in many ways denigrated, as to like it's not as good. But I find that it's just a matter of learning that skill and being able to deliver. So I figured if I can give patients what they want, because patients love clear aligner treatment, they love the aesthetics, the comfort, and all these things, and I can build my own skills to deliver the care that I expect, then that's going to be the best opportunity for me. And that's just really been my big focus. And if you recall the year I told you,
a professor in dental school right now saying clear aligners are never going to be as good as brackets. And it's like, what technology doesn't get better all the time? Do you have is your phone do the same things it did 10 years ago, or is it about 100 times more effective? But there was something about this that I thought interesting is that, do you find that there's a percentage of people, and I'm interested in like a guesstimate of people that would never do brackets, but you're getting to do aligners because they're clear? Like, what sense of that happening? How often do you feel like that's happening?
Oh, that happens all the time, Fred. That happens all the time. So I realized that back in 2008. And if you remember, that's when there was a major financial crisis. And I was able to grow my practice. I remember that. Really, because
I seem to remember that.
There was something that happened back then. I found the adult treatment, my practice is almost 50% adult. So if you know orthodontic practices, you'll understand that that's very unique and different because most practices see the kids. That's the bread and butter of orthodontics.
It's 90%, teenagers, essentially, right?
Yeah, our practice is 49% adults. So, I built a lot of relationships with our dentists, prosthodontists and periodontists and restorative dentists who have a lot of adult patients who needed orthodontic care, but just would never do it. And I would say over 90% of the adults will do clear aligner treatment. They refuse to be in treatment. They'll just say, I don't want to do it. They'll opt against it unless it's clear aligner treatment. And a lot of orthodontists will be like, well, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So they just go to wherever they can. Now they have direct to consumer process where they're promised it works, but patients will
that becomes questionable.
Yeah, right? That's questionable.
That's really
yeah, and that's not going to work. We have a lot of those, but anyway.
Yeah.
What I found is that these dentists and patients, we had large open bite cases, for example, that needed a lot of restorative full mouth reconstruction, but the dentist couldn't treat the case because the patient wouldn't be on brackets or do surgery. So if we were able to do it with clear aligners, non-surgical, it was a win-win across the board. The patient was accepting of the treatment. They were able to do the restorative care that they needed. And the patient, and I was happy, of course, to help them with that journey. So I find that the majority of patients in adults will not do traditional appliances. And that's been our niche market, so to speak, for, over a decade. I had an orthodontist one time tell me that, your practice is very niche. And I said, I'm in the best niche in the world. I just love it. It's
I'm
very
in the widest niche ever.
Yeah. So. But I think it's a lot of opportunities. And I'm not saying that there aren't patients that still opt for brackets. There's some young kids still want the colors and things. And there are some patients, that feel like they missed out, right? There's some patients who feel like in their youth, their parents maybe their family couldn't afford treatment. They feel like they want to go through the braces journey, but that's the exception. I would say almost every adult will do Invisalign treatment. I would say late teenagers for a long time have not. I've seen many that their parent didn't start them early. They feel it's kind of late. The kids, a sophomore or junior in high school, all their friends already had braces. They feel like they'll be a social pariah, if they have brackets. So these are generally clear aligner patients for us. But we see a lot of younger kids, I think, with the new generations, they feel like, hey, it's a YouTube generation. It's like my daughter, when she was younger, she wanted to be a YouTube star. And so everybody wants to be on camera and all that kind of stuff. And so now they're even more conscious of what they have. And so a lot of younger teenagers are very interested in aesthetic options. And then we have the young kids, there are even phase 1 younger kids, 7, 8, 9, that we do clear aligner treatment. And most of that is just out of comfort and ease for the parents. The kid can eat whatever they want. There's no apprehension on that end. But at the younger that you go, the percentage goes lower, right? The percentage of brackets is higher as you get younger.
Well, my understanding is from a clinical standpoint, as they get younger and younger, the number of cases that Invisalign or any clear brackets can do, it becomes more limited. Is that still true? I know that was true 10 years ago. Is that a lot less true now?
I would say that's a lot less true. I would say clinically, from my perspective of what I can treat, I can treat over 95% of what I see. There are very few things that I cannot treat with clear aligners now. But it takes a journey. That takes, that doesn't just happen, that's just by building skills and understanding. I would say making mistakes and learning from them, that's generally the best way to learn. But I would say most things can be treated. You just have to learn how to do it. And I think what dentists and orthodontists, because I'm talking across the board, even orthodontists misunderstand. They think that a lot of these products are out, good outside the box, so if you buy into it, you're going to be able to be successful. You have to learn how to operate and use it properly. And that just takes clinical skill like anything else. It's not like you can hire the best lab in the world. All of a sudden you're going to be the best restorative dentist. You have to build your skills in working with the process.
Now, you started, of course, before there was digital scanning. Did that create a quantum leap, or was that just a nice incremental improvement?
Oh, I was so excited about digital scanning. So I was one of the first I bought a iTero scanner. I think that was in 2009 or something. That's when Invisalign bought Cadent. Cadent used to be more of a restorative scanning machine, and iTero became kind of an orthodontist. They've, an Invisalign resource. And back then it was brutal because you would take a shot. It would take forever to take a scan, but I hated taking PVS impressions. And, I talk about the patient experience. That's our big focus. We always like to look at the biggest issues, the hurdles, the barriers of entry. So for barriers of entry, sometimes is the appliance, but orthodontic care generally has bad touch points, right? Number one is impressions. People hate impressions. And the other is separators. When you put the separator in for the brackets and stuff, those are painful procedures. So my goal was to get rid of those, and the impression was always the big issue. So when the scanners first came, I bought 2 of them like right off the bat as soon as they were supported for what I could do. And so we started integrating, particularly for the kiddos. We would take scans because, we take an alginate on a 7-8-year-old. You had to have usually some, special precautions of what, bring the kid in before eating breakfast and that kind of stuff. I hated it, and I was an associate. So when I got hired,
have to do it twice or 3 times.
Yeah, or 3 times. And then anytime anybody gagged in the clinic, I was an associate. The other senior doctor would be like, "That's your patient," So believe me, I knew the risks. So scanning was to me very exciting from a technology perspective. And CEREC has been around for even longer than that. So a lot of dentists were doing scanning for restorative side. Orthodontics just took a little bit longer to do that. And then several years later, then 3D printers came out, and I thought, oh my gosh, at this point, I can finally get rid of alginate altogether. And I would say, we see a lot of patients per month, and I would say maybe 1 per month gets an alginate impression in our practice now, because pretty much we take all digital impressions. We have an in-house lab. We 3D print. Other things we send out to the other labs for special things. Some of appliances are laser sintered, metal 3D printing. Some things are clear aligners that we can do in-house. Some stuff is sent out to the lab, all digital, from scanning. So the opportunities are huge, and particularly just patient experience, because they're not having to do all these extra steps, and certainly less of the uncomfortable, procedures and processes. So,
I always look at things from a marketing standpoint, but that's what you did too, is you said, what is one of the friction points of orthodontics? And it's the impression material. A lot of dentists don't get that. They don't understand the discomfort of it. A lot of times they're just they might maybe doing an impression for 1 or 2 teeth, but you're doing full mouth, impression material. And again, it's got to come out perfectly, or you have to do it again. And time goes by really slowly when you're the patient and you've got that stuff in your mouth. I don't know. It's like it sets up in a minute or 2 or whatever it is, but it's like, doesn't feel like that. And if you go, all right, we want to do it one more time because it's not exactly what we're looking for. And you go, really? Yeah. So sure. Good on you for figuring out that there was like a lot of technologies, like CEREC itself, like CAD/CAM. It's great for the practice, but it's great for the patient. Like there's a marketing value to this. You've taken away an appointment and a temporary and all of those things. And now, and there's that third element, which is you're high tech. It's like, no, we don't use that stuff anymore. We use 3-dimensional cameras. Oh, yeah. Really? That puts you in a higher bracket of dentistry in the patient's mind. Gives them something to talk about too. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say scanners and impressions, digital impression, I think many people still see it as like a very expensive PVS, or very expensive alginate. And I would say if that's the case, it's, you kind of miss the point. Just this is a very expensive phone. You know what I mean? But I rarely ever use it as a phone. Smart technology. It's all about, I have a computer in my pocket. I have a camera and all these other things. So when you buy a digital scanner, the impression is really, what I learned was just a very small part of it. You alluded to the big factor. Of course, the patient experience from an internal marketing perspective is huge, but we're able to do smile simulations. So we scan the patient within a few minutes. You can show them how the result might be, with outcome simulation and things like that. And so these are very compelling, messages. It's great for patient education because, I can show them like, oh, this is how we correct the overbite and all these other things. But when you show them their own teeth and you show them how their smile is going to change, without having to show them other examples of other patients, it's pretty powerful, I think, in patients, buying in emotionally, seeing
huge
that
difference between,
look at it.
Yeah. This is a typical before and after. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. This is your skull. And this is everything that I can see in it. And this is where I'm going to go with it. That's way more interesting to people. And as you say, you can do it right then. You can, okay, we're going to take the impression and then we're going to show you what it can be right then, instead of, that's not going to happen with an alginate. So you're gonna have to simulate it somehow. But I think it really makes an impression on people that this is something they're going to want because it is the best possible way to get this done. And also you could say we understand so much more about what's going on in your mouth. I remember the first time I was involved in when cone beam was first coming out as a scanner, and they were scanning an orthodontic case, and this patient had a fully undescended canine that you would have never seen on a Panorex. It was that far up. And so if they had tried to move this patient's teeth without knowing where that was, it would have obviously radically changed the result, and probably she would have said, I don't know why it always hurts over here, but these braces are the pain just never goes away. So that was an amazing eye opener for me of just how much more information is there for you that is to the patient's benefit as well as yours clinically.
Yeah, I would say for sure cone beam. We have a couple cone beams also, and those are amazing diagnostically. It just helps so much tremendously. And a lot of dentists now with implants and everything, I can't see how anybody can place an implant without one of those guys. Diagnostically, it's amazing. But, it's a big challenge. I will go back to the main purpose of why I decided to go a group practice route is that this equipment does cost money, and so I find that if I work together with, we have a group of doctors in our locations, and we can work together and have the top technology. It just was really a huge plus for us from a business perspective, as well as, patient care delivery. So, it's an amazing world, but it's challenging in many different ways,
Yeah. I mean, it's to set up a solo practice with all this equipment gets pretty expensive, and you're not using it all the time. If you're alone in that place, you're not going to work an 80-hour week, and to maximize the technology. But if several dentists are using the same technology, it's probably still not at capacity, but all of a sudden it's amortized over 3 or 4 people in the practice or in multiple practices. I'm sure you're able to send people to like drop by this office and get scanned, go do the cone beam if that's what you want. You don't have to have a cone beam at every location. So, right. Well, the big question I have is the student loan paid off yet? Are you
No, I'm almost there. I paid off my state loans. I went to University of Missouri, And I went to University of Illinois, and some of the state loans I did pay off, but my federal that were consolidated still have a few years to go. It's down to a very small amount, but it's crazy. Yeah.
It's funny to think about it. So,
well, but new grads come out with like multiples more than I do. The student loan debt is massive now.
Oh yeah, well they came out. They've graduated out with much bigger loans than you have, and you're still grinding away at it. So, yeah. Well, this is fascinating. I mean, your use of technology, your use of real estate, and your ability to delegate, I think, is one of your most powerful things. But also, you carved out a niche in orthodontics. You saw the window of opportunity, and you grabbed it, and you created a very different ratio of aligners to brackets than a typical practice, and it's proven to be a prosperous decision. So congratulations on your perspicacious approach to the profession and your specialty. Sean, it's a pleasure to know you. I look forward to seeing you next time I'm over in Hawaii. I usually get there every year. And I've met a bunch of your team. You do have a terrific leadership team, and I know you've benefited over the years from your relationship with Fortune, and they consider you one of their favorite clients as well, because you do succeed. You listen and take advantage of all their knowledge and run with it, and so you've built some nice success for yourself. So thanks for being on the podcast, and I wish you continued success. Now, is there one more office coming? Is there you checking out more lots to build on?
Right now, well, we're remodeling one of our offices. So right now, that's my main project. I think I'm good for now on 4, but you never know. I mean, I think there's an aging subset, I think of doctors who transition out, and our latest acquisition was, I think a win-win for a doctor who wants to cut down and yet still keep us part of a great practice. So that's the main thing. But ultimately, I just, I'm happy where I'm at. It just depends on where opportunities lie and what may fit in our vision as to what we provide here in our state. But no, thanks, Fred. I appreciate the time and being on the podcast. I appreciate everything you do. I'm a voracious reader. I love reading books about things, and I learn about marketing and business and things like that. I loved your 2 books that you've had out, and I appreciate every time that you come here, and that my team and I have really learned a lot from you. And marketing is one thing that I love. I've stepped away from it because I have a marketing team, but it is something that I love to be involved in. And it's fun. It's a fun part of practice.
So cool. Well, thank you for being on. And as I said, I wish you great success. And to all of my listeners out there, I hope you picked up a lot of information about how you can strategize to be unique and create a niche and expand your practice. And in the meantime, keep on becoming remarkable.